Greetings everyone! How goes things? My name is Blu-Ray and welcome to another random character drawing. In the last video we did, I was meant to draw a halfling riding a boar. However, as usual when it comes to my drawings, it did not quite turn out as planned. The boar got caught in a blender with a baboon and badly reassembled by a team of horribly disorganized biogenetics engineers, and the halfling got mixed up with a completely separate, not even vaguely related genre. I could say I totally meant for that to happen, but in truth it actually had a certain degree of spontaneity. So, here we are working on the proportions of Icky Zatang. Icky is a well-to-do, albeit promiscuous halfling cleric with bad eyesight and the expression of a permanently cheerful person. He carries a holy mace and a respectively massive tower shield with a symbol of his patron deity on the front. I think I'm getting a lot faster at drawing because after 15 minutes I was already into the second layer, quickly sketching in the shape of the character. Halflings in the D&D universe generally have curly brown hair, furry-topped feet, ample paunches, and ruddy faces with keen eyes. This was probably inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien's hobbits, who are also known as halflings in the Tolkien universe. However, due to Icky's slightly alternative nature, I would draw him with boots and black hair. Whichever belly he had is hidden under years of adventure and his thick iron armor. The small folk also rarely grow beards, but seeing as he's well into his years, I feel some long mutton chops would be justified. When it comes to his armor, Icky can be best defined as a misshapen cannonball. He is the literal definition of an ironclad and basically blunders his way into combat using his small size to keep from getting hit whilst his thick armor prevents damage. The disadvantage of this is that despite his apparent toughness, Icky has a low damage output, especially when fighting anything that isn't either evil or undead. This is the result of his size, with his muscles being too small in relativity to inflict much impact with his flanged mace. It didn't take too long to complete the second layer, so I moved on to the final layer that complete Icky's line work. As usual, there's not really much to talk about here, so let's move on to Blu-ray's special character backstory so I can bombard you with vaguely interesting details of Icky's past. Way back when Icky used to be a young clergyman, he was also the envoy of his church, and went on many exciting adventures that involved much gallivanting, getting in trouble, discovering huge treasure troves, defeating all manner of horrid creatures, uncovering various convoluted plots, and wooing plenty of babes. Yeah, I forgot to mention that Icky is a huge pervert. However, despite his many other flaws, commitment issues, and occasional suspicious actions, Icky is a very kind soul who's incapable of hate. He has of course a fairly obvious distaste for anything unholy, but unfailingly gives people of questionable ethics the opportunity to change their ways. Even when met with negative results, Icky would look for a solution that involved a minimum amount of violence, even if that minimum amount had something to do with bashing in someone's kneecaps. After a life of adventure, Icky decided to retire, mostly because his superiors started begging him to calm down on the basis that the church was having to fund his growing crowd of illegitimate children. Icky had amassed a huge fortune that would have fed an army for several years, but had given it to the church for safekeeping. During his retirement, Icky grew soft and eventually became restless of slowly unlearning everything he knew about adventuring. He finally found motivation when he discovered an assassination plot against him that involved one of his many children, killing him off for his vast fortune. Without telling anyone, whether from shame, impulse, hurry, or combined mixture, Icky sailed away to distant lands, abandoning his massive hoard in the church vaults with the intention of starting over. I wanted Icky's armor to appear slightly aged with a lack of obvious shine, so I gave it an iron look. Gave him a rosy complexion and light grey eyes as the character description suggested. I didn't want his hair to be completely black, as he is quite an old boy, so I put in some streaks of grey that gave him a pleasantly aged aesthetic. I forgot to add his holy symbol that he carries around, so after finishing the colour on the mace, which was a brighter looking steel, I got to work on the chain wrapped around his hand with the sun-shaped trinket of his deity on the end. I coloured that in and started with the shading, which is the part of the artwork that used to take me the longest and is now the quickest and easiest to do. The armour got a little bit of a shine, but not too much as it's fairly hard-worn iron. I tried to experiment with some mid-tones for the light reflecting effect, but it didn't really make it look better and instead made the eye a little confused when looking at it. So now I guess we can put him with the rest of the previously played characters, and yes, this is legitimately how small he is compared to human-sized people. Now I feel like the drawing went by a little too fast, and I do not wish to let anyone feel cheated, so I immediately decided to start on the next character. Funny enough, it also happens to be my last and most current character, and probably the one I'm having the most fun with at this time. This is probably due to the fact that in the past I've always played flawed but likable characters, who were always selflessly trying to do the right thing. For example, Ugrod the half-orc barbarian is thick as a brick, but loyal and protective. Dressio Vaxel, the androgynous elf rogue, is kind, understanding and progressive, even if he doesn't really understand himself or why he keeps on buying women's pink frilly underpants. Grendenbars only has one thing in common with these characters, his massive amount of flaws. Grendon is not well to do in any sense of the word. He's bitter, selfish, unpleasant, and sometimes even mean. He's the kind of person who sneers at passers-by who nod or smile at him, or the kind to growl unhappily at cute kittens. In fact, he resents anyone who isn't as miserable as him, probably out of jealousy. Grendon is of course a wizard. His face and body are incredibly pinched and thin, either a reflection of his character or because of the sickly upbringing in a place that he was rarely cared for. His eyes are narrow and paranoid, and his expression is one of snarling distaste. It can be easily deduced that Grendon rarely smiles, so despite the premature wrinkles brought about by a lifetime of noxious cigarettes, I very carefully avoided any laugh lines. I tried to give him some gritted teeth, and it didn't quite look great with the line work version, but I figured once I added color it would look alright, which is pretty much the case. Unfortunately, this was the same case I'd hoped for when it came to the crossbow and his dog-ended roll-up. At least now you have an example of why you shouldn't crowd too many details into one area, as I later was struck with a confusingly abstract cigarette. At least the trail of smoke gave some degree of perspective, and his knobbly knuckles came out well enough for me to forgive myself, contributing much to the character's overall appearance. Next I did his light crossbow. The dimensions confused me so much that I did something I don't normally do, and looked up a reference image. I had some degree of shame in this, as at one point I had built my own working crossbow out of scrap parts. I feel like I should have done this a little bit better. At this point I'd like to make a statement to other artists about this. Art requires discipline, which is something I don't really have a lot of. I am way too perfectionistic when it comes to artwork, and sometimes you have to just take a deep breath, let go and let it be. It doesn't help to get frustrated, because it can lead a person to give up, or worse, carry on and make your drawing dispassionate and impatient. This however swings both ways, so just remember not to be too lazy, and have some degree of control over your drawing. I'll immediately contradict myself here by saying that a relaxed artwork flows much more freely than a strained one. So don't worry too much if a bit of laziness is the case. It's normally not too difficult to fix your mistakes later on, or even have mistakes that actually work for your drawing. Okay, I'm done impersonating Bob Ross now. I took a break on the crossbow and came back to finish it after a long walk and a lot of coffee. I tried to give Grendon a component pouch that would look realistically big enough to hold his many spells and ingredients, and even perhaps some of his adventuring gear. I guess I was having one of those days where my hand didn't want to cooperate, because I struggled with this as well. But I used my aforementioned advice to come up with a sort of accordion style satchel. We're almost done, with the robe and boots being the last parts of the line art. This is where Grendon's character begins to perplex me. When drawing his robe, I remember how many times he'd stripped off a piece of the edge in order to patch someone up. Despite this being the dirtiest bandage ever, it's also somewhat of a kind gesture. Maybe deep down in that blackened, battered, abused soul, Grendon actually does give a damn. That, or he needs the fighter to stay alive long enough for the next battle. Meat shields tend to be expensive to maintain, you know. I'm not going to lie, I really want these boots. I was really happy with how they came out. Boots are Grendon's best kept items, as dry and comfortable feet are probably the closest thing to contentment a wizard like Grendon can possibly feel. Also, a wizard can't cast any electricity spells if his damaged boots are full of water. Well, it is technically possible if he's in the mood for defibrillating himself. Lastly, I tried to add an indication of wear and tear on Grendon's attire, as being on the run leaves little opportunity to repair or maintain clothing. Speaking of which, I just managed to get through the usually quite boring part pretty quickly. I didn't even get around to Grendon's backstory. Grendon's about 60 years old, which is middle-aged for a half-elf. Most of his life he'd spent on the rougher side of a filthy river marsh city where he was raised by unpleasant parents who were heavily into their religion and politics, and a favorited older brother who abused every overlooked opportunity to make Grendon's life a living hell. Grendon ended up trapped in an accounting job until his 30s before he moved to a wizard school on a small island to escape his family and get away from the smoggy rat-ridden city. He continued his accounting work until it was found that he had some amount of magical aptitude and was assigned an apprenticeship with a grumpy wizard between his long hours of bookkeeping. Here he was taught the art of conjuration, as being able to summon creatures from extra-dimensional planes was very handy. They were mostly just small demons used as calculators to tell the time and other menial tasks. The tiny hapless devils didn't get much say in the matter and were generally sulky about the whole ordeal. He learned slowly under the tenuous tutorship until one day a child prodigy brought to the school accidentally released a burst of mind-altering power during an anxiety attack. Though he was unaware of this, the blast had a huge effect on Grendon's already sour mental chemistry. A few days later, he began to hear spoken conversations about him and became suspicious of his fellow wizards. His rattled mind falsely deducted that the senior wizards wanted to take away his newly found magical ability and even have him eliminated as a threat. Not long after it was reported that the child prodigy mysteriously left the island, Grendon fled as well. He was still convinced that the wizards were after him, worried that they'll either kill him or worse, take away his magic, the only thing he really ever truly had besides his spell book that he'd stolen upon his escape, and his hat. In fact, they probably are after him under the suspicion that he knows something about the disappearance of the incredibly talented and mysteriously vanishing prodigy. So I guess we're finished with Grendon Bowles, the last character I've ever played during the course of my Dungeons & Dragons experiences. I just added a few final touches and rearranged the characters a bit to make their heights more accurate. The assassin was one of my first drawings I've ever done on this art tablet, and you can see the difference in my art style since the beginning, especially in terms of how quickly I complete a character. In any case, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really appreciate any feedback you have. Good or bad, doesn't matter, I just like starting a conversation with you guys. Hit the bell icon if you wish to be notified of videos the moment they come out on YouTube, and also, every time you forget to like and subscribe, a little D&D art fairy takes 1d4 emotional damage, so that's like 30 or 40 d4s or something. Oof. Thanks so much for watching, all the best everyone, see you next time.